We're supposed to have a high here of about 52 on Thanksgiving and a low of 40. That's going to be that's pretty nice weather overall. Be outdoors, and of course the new restrictions and guidelines are kicking in. Let's talk about that today, and let's do so with our good friend Dr. John Braccio, Regional Psychological Services of East Lansing, drjohnb.com, and star of last week's webinar with the annual health forum with the Lansing Regional Chamber of Commerce and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. Good morning, sir. Welcome.
Well, good morning, Dave. And that was a lot of fun last week, and I certainly hope we shared some good information on resiliency. That's certainly an important thing during this period. And
I think it ties in today too, Doc, because
yes, it does.
We got to be resilient when we get a new 3-week order from the State Department of Health and Human Services, and it may not be as onerous as the one back in the late winter, early spring, but it does bring changes about for us. So we try to knock down this virus, and it happens during the Thanksgiving season. That's my favorite holiday, and we're still up in the air as what we're going to do as a family, and I know a lot of people are in the same position. So what say you? How do you stay grateful with everything going on?
A couple things. I guess, we're alive. We're trying to move forward as a country.
Okay. Good point.
We're in the midst of what looks like will be a peaceful, transition of power, which, of course, is what's made our country very, very successful over many, many centuries now, a couple centuries now. I think let me just give a personal thing. Our large family get-together of 30, we're now going to be having 10 for Thanksgiving, just an immediate family. So everybody's having some immediate changes. And I think at this time, when people got the word that there was going to be another 3 weeks of more restrictions, I think the general feeling was kind of not again. But it's something, it's where we are, it's reality. And I think rather than focusing on negativity, I think it is a time to be looking at gratefulness, looking for, what's happening now? What are things, we can do? And a couple of things come to my mind. We can call persons from the past, maybe more recently, have helped us and advanced us, and thank them and talk to them. I've had a few people do that. May have mentioned that before on the show. And it's a good thing to do. It's a way to give thanks and make someone feel very good that maybe hasn't had a lot of good things said to them in a long time. I think a second thing is call people and cheer them up if you know they're not doing well. And we know there are a lot of people struggling. I certainly can tell you it's my private work and the private work of others in our office. I think we then can be grateful for a time to further develop spirituality, individual relationship with God, if that's part of your life and maybe a part you haven't been that involved with. I think another one is with or without a sense of spirituality. It's a time to be grateful, and a time to evaluate and more strongly develop a moral code, a sense of right or wrong, where we're aiming in life, what are things that we can do, how can we interact more effectively with people in terms of doing the right thing. And then I think that be grateful for the time to contact friends and other persons for long interactions, which you probably really haven't had time to do. I know I've talked to some people I haven't talked to in a long time myself. Sometimes I've had more time at home or in the office and just will talk to someone and for an extended period of time, which I think is really good. And another thing that can be done is really look at the relationships you're in. It can be a spouse, it could be a friend, it can be family that's maybe not been getting much attention, maybe has not been being really worked at, kind of like a garden in disarray, and pull everything together, work together. And I think if we use this period to be grateful for things like that and many other things, I've just kind of put down some key things that come to my mind. I think this can be a positive time, even in the midst of a difficult period. And again, I think that Thanksgiving still will be good for the majority of people next week, which is another whole topic that we talk about. But for now, I think being grateful for what we can do, being grateful for the period of time we're in, that we are moving forward in spite of many difficulties, things we've seen, and to try to focus on a form of gratefulness rather than an anger, frustration, over-focusing on woe is me, how bad things are. And it's easy, I think, in very, very difficult times to become very depressed and down and very anxious and worried for the future and really having a difficult time in the present. So I think if we're being intentionally grateful, trying to do good things and be helpful, it's a useful way to use this difficult period.
Well, you just said the words there I was about to jump into. So good juxtaposition here, because being helpful. Do you find that when you're starting to question your own, I don't want to say existence, but when you're saying, boy, 9 months of this now, what is this all about? That moving past that and making an attempt to help others and do something. I guess the old thing would be take your mind, my parents would say, well, take your mind off your trouble and do this, and here's some chores, and here's some other, and find the goodness in that. Is there real value, you think, in that, Doc, this time of year?
Well, I just always think trying to be helpful. As I've used another few of my mother's quotes that to whom much is given, much is expected, and this you do to my most vulnerable creatures, you do unto me, and that kind of is a call to, if you have talents and abilities, use them appropriately and use them to help others in addition to yourself. Okay, but if you help your family and others, I think helping and doing things and making the world better, if you will, makes people happier, puts them in a better mood. I think that I still like the Christmas Carol, what happens to our good friend Mr. Scrooge in the period of time when a spirit of giving, a spirit of justice, a spirit of trying to do the right thing, a spirit of helping other people. These are all pretty wonderful things, and if we do them, we're going to feel better about ourselves. The covetous person who takes things and cheats people may end up with a large bank account, but those bank accounts don't give you a hug. They don't really care for you. You might want a nice bank account, but you want it based not on the blood, if you will, or the sweat of people you're taken advantage of, but based on mutual support, effort, mutuality in terms of reward, just doing things the right way. And life can work that way. A lot of times you'll find that people that care for others, there are people that care for them, will be helpful. You're going to run into people that take advantage of you in life. That's always going to be happening. But on balance, if we're fairly shrewd, if we're fairly good at judging people, we're good at listening to advice of others in terms of dealings with people, we can be successful and we can be happy. And if we lead with trying to be honest, trying to be a good citizen, trying to just be a good person, that's gratitude, that's a way to bring happiness, and it's a way to really get through difficult times by intentionally trying to be a good person and help others. Just that smile can help that person who's been down and out all day.
I want to let listeners here know something that, and of course you can go to lansingchamber.org, get directions on how to watch that webinar. But there was a question posed that you had a great answer for, and I really thought we should share it here on radio as well. When someone asked you on here, is there such thing, because you're being very positive right now, and there are people who will look at everything coming in to line with their life tomorrow, Wednesday, with the state, and say, boy, that's not very positive, and yet you are. And someone said, Doctor, my HR department says there's a thing called toxic positivity. What can you say about that? You had a great answer for that.
Well, kind of funny that you could have a person being accused of toxic, in terms of being in a good mood type of a thing, positivity. I did want to thinking on that too, and I guess I talked to a young woman I worked with at the University of Michigan. She had made a comment that she had heard something on that in terms of on NPR or something that had been written. I think there are two ways to look at that topic, toxic positivity. One, if you have an HR department that is not really tuned into reality, like old Baghdad Bob. I mean, somebody who's telling you things are really good. Yeah. Tomorrow's going to be the best day ever. And here, all of a sudden, you're maybe losing your job, you're losing your income, the company is falling apart. That type of toxic positivity, it's not accurate. It's not true. It's actually a false would be a way to put it. And the second one is, if a person isn't realistic with themselves and they're not realistic in the world, they can see positivity where really it isn't positive. Like if you're not getting up and you're not going to work or you're not being responsible in relationships, there's no way to be saying, hey, this is all going to work out. It's really no big thing. Let's not deal with this. That would be negative, in terms of the toxic positivity. On the other hand, I think we need to focus on the values of positivity, but being realistic. I think realistic positivity. But I thought that was really a good question. But it is something I do hear from people in terms of that comes from HR departments, that they're often not realistic or not really tuned into the difficulties of the worker. And that gets back into issues of of transparency, good communication, listening
Sure.
to staff, listening to the person who's around you. So, I think those were all good questions we had.
They were, and you added one thing to that really stuck with me afterwards. You said when people, would come in your office and have the same type, maybe they wouldn't call it that, but that outlook, you would say, and say, Doc, how come you're blah, blah, blah? You would say, well, you've come in here depressed, and I'm trying to bring you over to my side. I'm not trying to get over to where you are and be depressed like you are right now. So, I mean, it made perfect sense. And that idea that we would have, more of a half full than half empty, and be grateful for what we have ahead of Thanksgiving is a good one. Here's one. I know we'll talk more about the Thanksgiving holiday next week. It'll be very different this year for people. There's no question about it, and how folks will get through that and make it, maybe come out the other side even better than right now. We'll get into that next time around with Dr. John Braccio. drjohnb.com is the place where the website where the podcast will be. Regional Psychological of East Lansing. Good to talk to you, Doc.
Could I make
safe.
one final comment, Dave?
Sure.
In terms of that is a true statement. I have had various people over the years say, Dr. Braccio, you're in a good mood, I'm in a bad mood, and sometimes they can say it even be almost distressing. And I do honestly, in a gentle, nice way, I'll say, look, I'm in a good mood. You ought to be talking to me about a good mood, not be trying to talk to me about why I'm not in a bad mood. So it is can be kind of humorous in a way, but positivity, hey, given the choice, why not roll with a positive outlook and move forward in that direction?
Good stuff. We will talk to you again soon. Stay safe.
Bye-bye. Same to you.
Take care. We're back shortly, 1320. WILS.